All right, in this lesson, we'll take a look at two identical methods that return the number of characters in a string, and they are the length method and the size method. Let's go ahead and create four different strings here. I'm going to store them each in a separate variable. So let's do A, I'm going to assign that to hello world. B, I'm going to assign to a slightly longer string, hi, my name is Boris. Let's do an exclamation point there at the end. Let's create a string with a single space in variable C, and let's assign variable D to what we call an empty string, and an empty string is just the quotes without actually anything explicitly written in there, all right? Now I'm just going to call the length method on each one of these four variables, each one of these four strings, to see the results we get. So the length method predictably gives us the number of characters within the string. So if I take a look at my first result, we have 11. That's 5 characters in the word hello, 5 characters in the word world, and then one more character, that's the space in the middle. Remember, spaces count, periods count, exclamation points count, question marks count. Everything within the string counts as a valid character, and spaces are no exception. That's why we're getting 11 here instead of 10. Let's take a look at the results on B. That's a little bit of a longer string. We can see we're going to get back 21. If we try the exact same method on C, remember C is just one space, and a space counts as a valid character, so the length of C is equal to 1. And if I call the length method on D, which is an empty string, we have 0 characters present in that string. Now, just to show you that the size method is identical, I'm literally just going to copy these 4 lines of code, put them a little bit below. I'm also going to stick a little put statement in here just so that we can separate the 2 sections here, and I'm going to replace the method calls here from length to size. Length and size are exactly the same. They're basically duplicate methods, if you will. They perform the exact same function. You may see one or the other in different bits of Ruby code. That's why I wanted to introduce you to both options so they're not jarring to you if you do encounter one or the other, but they are identical. And to prove it to you, let's take a look here. We can see 11, 21, 1, and 0 are the values output to the right, the exact same thing no matter what method we call. Finally, I do want to conclude this lesson and talk a little bit more about the bigger picture in Ruby and how everything is really an object in Ruby. That's the key takeaway that we introduced in the very first lesson of this course. Let's say I go back to the very first result here of getting the number of characters in the A string with the length method. To us, this makes sense. It tells us there are 11 characters in the string hello world. But what is 11 to Ruby? How does Ruby understand the concept of numbers? Well, what we're getting back from the length method here is actually a fixed num object. Remember that this is just another object that exists in Ruby, just like a string is a type of object. We can in fact prove that this is a fixed num object by calling the class method on this result, and this is possible because of method chaining. Method chaining, of course, is the idea that you can perform multiple method calls on the same line, and the reason is because each subsequent method call is simply going to give you back a new object, and that object is going to come packed and equipped with methods. So when I have something like A, I begin with a string. A string has a length method. That length method is going to give me back a fixed num, and that fixed num includes a class method. So here I can output the class method on my resulting 11 number, and I'm going to get fixed num output right here. In fact, because this length method gives me back a number, all of the familiar methods that we explored in the previous section are available here. So for example, you may recall the next method, which increments a number by 1. So the length method is going to give us a number of 11, and the next method is going to give us 12. You may also recall a method like odd. So if I call odd here, remember the first part of this sequence is simply giving me back a fixed num object. That fixed num object includes a method like odd, so we can simply call it and chain it in sequence here, and thus 11 is odd, so we're going to get back a true. In fact, when you think about it, what are we getting back here from the odd method? We're getting yet another object. We're getting a Boolean object. Technically speaking, the official name for this class, or for the blueprint that forms this thing, is a true class. I can do that by calling the class method again on this resulting thing and see that it is in fact a true class. But we can call it a Boolean. That's the more common term for it. But you can see here in this process, we're basically going from across three different objects. We're beginning with a string, we're calling a method to get a fixed num, then we're calling another method on that fixed num, and we're getting back a true class or a Boolean object, so to speak. So that just goes to show you that just because a method is called on a specific type of object does not mean that it has to return the exact same type of object. It can return something completely different. And the same is true in other cases. There are certain cases where you can call a method on a fixed num and you're going to get a different object back. And same thing goes for strings and vice versa. It really depends just on the object and the methods that are available to it. Starting to see Ruby as just a bunch of objects that send messages to each other is critical to understanding how the language works as a whole. So hopefully you're getting a sense here of what it is that we're doing in this example. Otherwise, the real key takeaway of this lesson is the length and size methods. They both return the number of characters in the string. They're identical, they're duplicate. You can use whichever one you want in your code. Throughout this course, I'm probably going to use length. I find it the more obvious one, even though it is a little bit longer. I think length is a little bit more intuitive to me, but whatever you prefer is up to you. And do remember, of course, that the characters like spaces and periods and exclamation points do count in that ultimate character count, okay? So I'll see you in the next lesson.